In this video, we'll make a comparison of Kroger and Whole Foods cash conversion cycle. The cash conversion cycle is a ratio-driven method of evaluating the speed with which money flows through a business in its normal course of operations. The cash conversion cycle is essentially days of inventory, how long stuff sits on the shelf on average. And remember, some stuff's going to fly off the shelf tomorrow. You're not going to keep bread and eggs on the shelf for a month. But there's other things like cans of pork and beans that can sit on the shelf for a year. Well, let's just leave it at a year without going bad. Now, they have an expiration date, but the expiration date's way in the future. When we're looking at the cash conversion cycle, we're looking at the entire company, but we also recognize that when we're managing a company, we look at the individual pieces as well. All right, so the cash conversion cycle is days of inventory, how long it sits on the shelf, plus days of receivables, how long in between when we sell it and when we actually collect on the cash. Now, grocery stores do not have a whole lot of accounts receivable, so that's going to be a small number. The days of inventory and the days of receivables together is what we call the operating cycle. That's how long it takes from in between when the firm buys the stuff and when they're actually paid for it. So their cash is tied up for that many days. And we look here at Kroger's. The days of inventory is inventory divided by 1 day's cost of goods sold. So if they sell $245 million of stuff every day, all right, that's the cost of the goods that they sold. If they stopped replacing goods, it would take about 27 days, 26.8 days to run out of stuff, in theory. That's when the shelves are all bare. Okay? Now, Kroger in calendar year 2016 also had, at the end of the year, accounts receivable of about $1.6 billion. If we divide the accounts receivable by what they sell per day, that'll give you a 5-day window on average between when they sell stuff and when they collect. Now remember, most of what Kroger sells is cash on the barrelhead. So the accounts receivable for the typical sale is zero. You either put it right on your debit card or hand them cash, and they're paid right away. So these numbers can be a little misleading if you don't really understand how the business is operating. These are the public numbers we're given. I don't have how much of the what proportion of sales are actually credit sales. If I worked at Kroger, I'd have that information, but it's a trade secret. Okay, so you add together how long it's in inventory and how long it's in accounts receivable, and that's about 32 days. Now, the other thing is that when Kroger buys stuff, they don't pay cash for the stuff they buy. When the bread truck comes around and drops off bread, they also drop off an invoice. Says, you owe me X dollars payable within Y number of days. So while they have money tied up in sales to their customers for about 32 days, the purchases that they bought from their suppliers, that's almost 24 days. So in essence, the cash conversion cycle is only about 8 days worth of money tied up in working capital. And we see with Kroger, if we're looking over time, 24 days, the days of inventory. Inventory's gone up to close to 27 days, all right, over this 5-year period. And the days of receivables has climbed a little over a day. So they used to have about 28 days tied up. Now they have 32 days. That's an increase of about 3.5 days worth of money. But at the same time, their payables have gone up by 2 days. So that helped ameliorate the increase in the cash conversion cycle, but it's still between 7 and 8 days. If we compare that to Whole Foods, Whole Foods, on the other hand, has a shorter inventory conversion period, or days of inventory. That's probably more a reflection of what they sell than it is anything else. Whole Foods sells more fresh food, which can't sit on the shelf as long. Notice that the days of receivables is roughly comparable for both firms. But we do see a big difference in the days of payables. So the days of payables is about half as long for Whole Foods as it is for Kroger, and that might be a reflection of the type of products they buy as well. If they're buying perishables, they have to buy them more often, which means that they probably have to pay for them a relatively shorter period of time. So in any event, what we see is that while Whole Foods has less time, has less cash tied up in the operating cycle, they also have less of an offset with the days of payables. So they actually have a relatively higher cash conversion cycle. The higher the cash conversion cycle, the longer your money is tied up in working capital. So Kroger is actually more liquid when it comes to turning sales into actual dollar bills.